welcome to Moms on a Mission. OrganicBodyEssentials.com is an organic, powerful, potent skincare line, but it's toxin free. It's literally food for your skin. If you go to OrganicBodyEssentials.com, there are over 34 products there, and all of them have literally no chemicals. It is all pure plant-based and oil-based products. If you like what you're hearing at Moms on a Mission, if it's blessing you in any way, please support our podcast. Just go to OrganicBodyEssentials.com, type in the code MISSION. That's OrganicBodyEssentials.com, code MISSION, and we would be so appreciative. Okay, you're going to want to buckle up because today's show is one you will not want to miss. I got to sit down with Yvette Hampton. She is a home education guru. She started this over 13 years ago, and she has made a movie, Schoolhouse Rocked, and she talks about how easy homeschooling is and how important it is. And it's just some great information, whether you can homeschool or not, and whether you want to or not. It's just good to know this information and to educate yourself so that you can be a blessing and share this information with others. You don't want to miss this show. This is really an interesting situation because I was flying back from Las Vegas from the Reawaken America tour, and I sat next to a lovely lady on the airplane. And usually I just sit there and I'm kind of quiet on the plane. And I just started talking to her, and she started talking about how she is this homeschool mom. And I've heard of homeschooling before, but she was talking about it like it, not like I heard about it maybe 10 or 20 years ago, like it was this up and coming movement that a lot of people participated in. And so we just got to chatting, and she talked to me about this wonderful lady named Yvette Hampton. And she said, you have to meet her. You have to have her on your podcast. And she has this amazing movie called Schoolhouse Rocked, and you have to see that movie. And so talk about divine connection. So I got off that plane and I went home and I watched the movie. I'm halfway through it, and I reached out to this wonderful lady sitting next to me. Without further ado, I want to introduce and welcome to Moms on a Mission, Yvette Hampton.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for coming. It's just the story of how we met. I just thought God will go to, the ends of the earth to get people to meet and the right people. So I'm super excited to have her on today. So Yvette is a homeschool guru. I think she fell into this like a lot of people who thought, oh, homeschool, I can't do this. It's overwhelming. I don't know what to do, but I don't like this education, this indoctrination. So I would love for you to just tell the audience and myself how you even came into this movement.
Sure. Well, we're from California. We're from Los Angeles. And so we were like so many other people where we said we would never, ever, ever, ever homeschool our kids. I mean, we were adamant about it. As a matter of fact, my husband and I had been married for almost 11 years by the time our first daughter was born. So for 11 years, we talked about how we were going to raise our kids and what we would do for their education. And it always ended with, but we would never homeschool. And that was because we had so many misconceptions about homeschooling. We believed all the negative stereotypes. We just didn't understand it. So along comes our daughter, and about 5 years later, our second daughter came along. And while I was pregnant with our youngest daughter, our oldest, she was 4, about to turn 5. And it was time for her to go to kindergarten or pre-K. And so our plan was always to put her in a private school. It was a private school that I grew up in myself. And when it came time to do that, I was pregnant with my youngest. And so I would have had to work because we lived in Los Angeles. And that just was how it was going to have to work out, was I would have to work during the day so we could afford the tuition. Mm-hmm. And so that was the plan. Well, and God's good, just his faithfulness. I couldn't work that year because I was getting ready to have a baby. And so we said, well, I had always been a stay-at-home mom. And so I said, well, maybe we could just kind of homeschool-ish for this first year. She's only 4. How hard can that be? And some friends of ours invited us to go to a homeschool convention in Los Angeles. And it was so funny because I remember just thinking it's going to be a parking lot full of minivans and a bunch of people in denim jumpers and long hair or buns in their hair. No makeup. And I am just not, but I'm not going to fit in. They all are good cooks and I'm a horrible cook. Like I just had this idea that they were all going to be socially awkward. It was just going to be weird. And so we said to our friends, okay, we'll go with you. And we show up to this convention And it was like, oh, these are just people, just like you and me. I mean, they're just moms and dads. And so that weekend alone, literally, it was so funny. I remember walking around with my big belly. I was big pregnant at the time and kind of waddling through that convention. And in one weekend alone, it was literally like the scales fell from our eyes. And we were able to see for the first time what home education was. And really what we got was, it wasn't that it was about the academics, but it was about discipleship. It was about us being able to instill our values and our morals and what we wanted our children to learn into their hearts, and not allowing someone else to do that. So, and at that time, also because we had waited so long for our daughter to be born, I loved being home with her. Like, I really genuinely loved spending time with her. And so there was that part of it too, where I just thought, I don't want to send her off to someone else. I don't want someone else to get to enjoy her childhood. I want to do that myself. And because I loved spending time with her. And so that's kind of what started our journey. And I had no idea what I was doing. And we went into it with, I mean, honestly, it was knees knocking, sweat on my brow. I was terrified because I hated school growing up myself. I was a terrible student growing up. And I just thought, I don't know how I can do this, but I'm trusting that the Lord's called us to it. So I'm going to be faithful and obey and trust him to, we're going to see how this unfolds and we're going to trust the Lord to unfold it for us. So that's how we started.
So this movie, I just have to tell you, I think it's funny listening to your story now, because you said, let's try it for a year. I think Sam Sorbo might have said the same thing, like they're just going to try it for a little bit. And really anything new and hard, I think if you just commit to something little and just see how it goes, and then you see that it's nothing like people lie about and say and try to make you feel incompetent. And so the movie, and I'm going to have to tell you, when I heard about this movie, a homeschool movie, I wasn't like, oh, this is going to be riveting. And but I'm telling you what, this movie is amazing. It's done so professionally, and it's so anointed and so powerful. And it's just like reading the Bible. I mean, it speaks to you as you listen to these truths, and you listen to so many parents say the same thing, that I'm not equipped. And so talk to us about you in the movie. We were just talking about this before we started this. I said to Yvette, I said, wow, you must have an amazing camera, because the very beginning of the movie, it shows them leaving California in a camper, which was, the car also was packed to the ceiling with stuff. And she said a lot of it was with their iPhone. It looks amazing, the clarity. But talk to us about how you came to that decision. So you dabbled a little bit in this, you committed for just a little bit, and then you're moving. So talk to me about that transition.
About the decision to make the movie.
Yeah. And to leave.
Yeah. That was a crazy story. So it was about April of the year 2016. And I'll back up a little bit. For many years, my husband and I both were born and raised in California, in Southern California. And for many years, we just felt like the Lord was just saying, just prepare yourselves. It's going to be time to go. It's going to be time to leave. And so we just kept doing our thing. My husband worked in the film industry in Hollywood. And so he's a filmmaker. And we just prayed and waited. And in December of 2016, we just felt like, okay, not December. We left in December. In April of 2016, we started just to feel like, okay, maybe it's really time to put this into action. We just felt like the Lord was pulling us to leave, but we had no idea where we would go, what we would do. And so we're sitting in church one morning, and this was so funny. I actually, on our church bulletin, I wrote on there, I said, I think that we should sell our house and all of our stuff and get an RV and go travel. And he just looked at me. I passed it to him in church, like a kid passing a note in class. And he just looked at me and he was like, we can't do that. What are you talking about? So after church, he just said, there's no way we can do that. We couldn't afford to do that. That's ridiculous. We wouldn't know where to go. And I was like, okay, whatever. It's just this like fleeting thought that I had, whatever. And several months later, my husband, he worked in the movie industry. And then he taught film at a Christian school for middle school and high school. And at the end of that year, he knew he wasn't going to go back to teaching. And he could have done a number of things. He wasn't exactly sure. He didn't want to go back into Hollywood. He had been in the military. His degree is in marketing. I mean, there were a ton of things that he could have done, but he just said, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing right now, but I know the Lord has a plan for me. And so we prayed and prayed and prayed. And it was months of just seeking the Lord's will for our family. And one morning he came to me, he said, I don't know how to tell you this, but I think that we should sell our house and all of our stuff and get an RV and go travel. And I think we should make a movie on homeschooling. And I said, yes, let's do that. And it was really cool because the Lord had prepared me back in April when we were sitting in church that morning. And then we never even talked about it again. So when he came to me, I knew instantly that that was what the Lord was calling him to do and calling our family to do. So I said, let's do it. And so sure enough, in God's perfect provision and plan, we put our house up for sale. It sold within a few days. Everything in it sold. I mean, it was miraculous to see how everything came together. We found the truck that we wanted. We found the perfect little trailer for our family that we wanted. And on December 16th, we drove out of California, not knowing actually where exactly we were going to end up. We knew we were heading to Georgia because half of our family has since moved to the Savannah, Georgia area. So we were heading east, and that was all we knew. But we didn't know if we would stay in Georgia. We didn't know where we would end up. We just trusted the Lord and said, okay, we're going to go make this movie. We didn't even know exactly how we were going to make the movie or who was going to be in it. And the Lord just said, go. So we went, and he started lining up people to be in the movie, including Sam Sorbo. I mean, she was one. Heidi St. John was another. And it was like he literally just lined up every cast member.
And Dr. Carol Swain.
Dr. Carol Swain, she's in it. Ken Ham. It's the lineup is just incredible. And it was really cool as we were filming the movie just to see how all of their stories came together. So that's kind of how the movie came to be. It was actually my husband's idea. And really it was the Lord's idea, but he put it on my husband's heart to film this. And the reason was because we had been in that place where we didn't understand homeschooling. We had all the questions, and we wanted to make a movie that answered all of the questions that people had about home education.
So had you been homeschooling for a bit before you left?
At that time, we were in our 6th year or 7th year of homeschooling.
Okay. And clearly it was going well.
It was going well. Yes. And I had kind of become like a homeschool evangelist with my friends who weren't yet homeschooling. I would tell them all about it and say, you need to try this, and here's why. And I would give them all the reasons. And it's like when, you go to a really good restaurant and you have the best meal and you want to go share it with all your friends. Say, you've got to try this restaurant. It is the most amazing restaurant. They have the best food there, and you are going to walk away so satisfied. And that's what homeschooling had become to me, was that it was so exciting for our family that I wanted to share it with everybody.
Yeah. And how was that received initially when you first started sharing it with your friends?
Really well. I mean, I think that it was really well received. I mean, most of the people that I talked to were people who were already questioning the public schools, even the private schools, and they were wanting to know about homeschooling. And, we started homeschooling. We're in our 13th year of homeschooling. Our oldest daughter is a senior this year, which is incredible. And our youngest is in 7th grade. And so, many of them were starting to just ask the questions, but at that point, it was already pretty well received, especially in California. A lot of people were homeschooling already. And so it wasn't that weird, like, oh, you weird and socialized homeschoolers. Some people still thought that. Now, 13 years later, almost no one thinks that. But back then, people still had questions about it. And it was well received, I think, from most people that I talked to.
And I have a friend who's homeschooled on and off, and she's talked about co-ops and things of that nature. And really, it doesn't seem, even though I probably suffer from those same lies, like I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, or whatever, I've heard enough about it from people who've done it that there's so much help. It's not like you're on your own coming up with like, okay, I'm going to teach you multiplication. You have a guide, and like even Sam has talked about in her books, she'll talk about how you can literally order classical conversations and it can show up on your doorstep. And it's just the advancements in this area are truly unreal. So I was just curious. It seems like the way that kids get educated, I put my son in Christian school because my mom was a Christian school teacher. And I know we talked about this before, and you just automatically assume that they'll use like a Becca or a Christian curriculum. Right. And you were saying a lot of Christian schools just use regular government school curricula.
Yeah.
And so I'd love for you to talk to us about the overarching theme of homeschooling, like what that educational process looks like.
Well, homeschooling is interesting because when we think about school, we always think about academics, right? We always think math, reading, writing, science, history, all those things. That's what school is. And in reality, what school is discipleship. It's somebody teaching their worldview to your children. And I had mentioned that before when we went to that first convention, realizing like, oh, it's all about discipleship. And so really what it is about parenting. And whoever has your kids for the most amount of time is the one who has the most influence on them. And so you have to look at who's teaching their kids. What is it that they're being taught? Yes, they're being taught all of these academics, but what worldview are they being taught from? And so for us, we really felt like we wanted our girls to be taught everything from a biblical worldview. That's really important to us because ultimately what matters most is that they love Jesus. And let me just say, before I say all this, homeschooling is not the gospel. It does not save our children. There are lots of kids who grow up in homeschooled homes and they walk away from the Lord. And there are lots of kids who grow up in public school or private school and they love Jesus with all their hearts. My husband grew up in a public school. He loves the Lord beyond anyone I know. I grew up in a Christian school. I love the Lord. I know lots of homeschoolers who have completely walked away. And so homeschooling itself, it's not the gospel. It's not what saves our kids, but it's being able to instill that worldview into them and pointing them in the direction of Jesus all the time, because ultimately that's really all that matters. When our kids come face to face with the Lord, he is not going to care how well they did on their math test or what science facts they knew or anything like that, what history dates they do or don't know. He wants to know, did you love me? Did you serve me? Did you fulfill your purpose that I put on your life while you were on this earth? Mm-hmm. And so that was really, really important to us for our girls. And so homeschooling really is discipleship and indoctrination kind of go hand in hand. And so our kids are being indoctrinated in one way or another with some type of worldview. And this, I think, is so interesting. The definition of indoctrination is teaching a doctrine, principle, or ideology, especially one with a specific point of view. So everyone's being indoctrinated, whether it's by school, social media, by their parents, by church, whatever it is that our kids are most exposed to, they're being indoctrinated by those things. And we know that to be true, of course. You look at our society and you look at where we are today as a nation, and much of that is because most people have grown up in a public school that hates God, hates family, hates parents. They don't want parents to have authority over their kids. They hate the kids themselves, which is why they're tearing their bodies apart and they're affirming every insane ideology that they have. They're pushing that on these kids. And that is a ploy of the enemy. That's Satan. He does not want our kids to grow up to love and serve and obey Jesus. And so education really is indoctrination. It's discipleship. It's parenting. And then the academics are just kind of the sprinkling on top of that. But when you infiltrate all of the academics with a biblical worldview, you're getting all of that discipleship and indoctrination all in one thing. And then it's about relationships too. I mean, I stand in awe of the relationship that I have with both of my girls. My 17-year-old, she's going to be 18 in just a few months. And I never would have imagined that I could have this kind of relationship with her. And it's not perfect. Nothing's perfect because we're all sinful people, right? But with her and then my youngest daughter as well. I mean, I love that we get to just have this very unique, special kind of relationship. I know them better than anyone else knows them, which again is why homeschooling works so well, because we know our kids better than anyone else. We know their strengths and their weaknesses. We know how they learn. We know what makes them tick. Yesterday, some might go, and be in shock over this. Yesterday, my oldest daughter, she's been struggling with insomnia for some reason. We're not exactly sure what's going on, but she's almost 18 and she's thinking through life and there's a lot of things going on. And so she has had a really hard time sleeping. And so yesterday I just thought, I'm going to let her sleep, because she learns better when she's rested. She slept till 12:30 in the afternoon and I let her. And you know what? We were still doing schoolwork, academic type stuff at 6:00 in the evening. And she was fine with it. And I was fine with it. And it didn't matter because she was able to do it while she was rested and she was ready to learn. Had I gotten her up at 7 a.m, she would have just been a mess throughout the day, and unable to really learn the things that she was supposed to learn yesterday. So it just gives us so much flexibility as well with our kids.
For boys, I know like sitting at a desk for hours and hours, how beautiful after they spend 20 or 30 minutes, they can go run outside and go on the swing set or just get some energy out and then come back in, do another 20 minutes or whatever. Instead of, having maybe 2 recesses for the whole day for the elementary, you can really help them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Gives you the freedom to do so many things because you can spend time outside. You can go outside and do your schoolwork if you want to. We've done that many times where we've gone outside and just popped up our lawn chairs or sat on our front porch and we'll read. We do a lot of reading together. I still read to my girls, both of them, and I love that. But we've always done that. So that's just part of our family culture. We read books together and they read books on their own too, but we always have at least one book that we're reading together. And
as a family, and y'all take turns and read through this.
Usually I read to them.
Okay.
Sometimes they will read, but usually it's a book that I will read to them. And it's so fun. We snuggle up on the couch, usually with our blankets and cup of tea, and we just read books together. And it's fun to be able to do that. And oftentimes they're historical fiction or biographies, things like that. So because we want to learn from people. And so we get to learn together. And really, one of the greatest things is I'm regaining my education. Like I said, I hated school growing up. And so I'm getting to regain my education as I'm teaching my kids. So I'm learning about history and I'm like, I never knew that thing about history or about science. And it's really fun to be able to learn because learning doesn't stop. I thought it did. When I graduated high school, I was like, and I'm done. I never have to do this again. And I realized pretty quickly once we got into homeschooling that, learning is like a lifelong thing.
Mm-hmm.
Who knew?
Yeah. And I would think that would be fascinating because I feel like you appreciate it more as you age. Like I love to read now. I love to learn. I listen to books. I listen to podcasts. I think that would be just a wonderful side thing that's going on that you get to learn while your kids are learning.
Yes.
I think that's neat. And my mom, she used to be a Christian school teacher and she would come home and I didn't appreciate this, as you can imagine, as a kid, but she would start sharing with me different things about our foundation and how our country was founded. And I was like, wah, wah. Like, I just didn't really care. And she was so excited about it. And now, you're old, right? When you finally get excited again about our history. But
yes.
The beautiful thing though, is that when you're teaching your kids and you're learning along with them, it's almost like your excitement about it is contagious. You and I probably weren't excited. History was my least favorite class, but I think your kids so well, and the way as you're excited and you're teaching them in a way that they probably appreciate and can receive from, and then they can get excited about it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is fun to do that. As a matter of fact, this is really funny. My daughter was talking to her best friend, whose mom is my best friend. And my best friend loves math. She is a math geek through and through. Her daughter, who's my daughter's best friend, does not love math. And she was telling me about how she started crying. My friend started crying when her daughter told her she hated math because she was like, how do you hate math? It's like the greatest thing in the world. And so it's pretty funny because when you're teaching your kids at home, you start to learn how they're bent. How did God create them? We have this unrealistic idea when it comes to traditional school that our kids need to be on the honor roll. They need to ace everything. Well, how many historians do you know who are scientists? How many writers do you know who are, artists? God has made each one of us so uniquely, and we all have our strengths. So you can love history and know everything about it, but it doesn't mean you need to know science and know everything about it. Like you need to know the basics of these things, but we put so much pressure on these kids that you have to ace everything. You have to be an expert at every single subject. Why? An engineer is not going to grow up to be an art teacher, most likely.
Pretty safe bet.
Everyone's different. And so I think being able to look at the strengths of our children and see how God created them, and we can really focus on those things, is so much more important than pushing kids. You have to get all A's. You have to get straight A's. You have to get straight A's. And I want that bumper sticker that says my child was an honor student. And I'm not saying it's wrong for kids to excel and ace everything. It's just for the average kid, it puts a lot of pressure on them.
Yeah. And I have to say, I'm going to admit it right here and right now that I was one of those parents. I was like, oh, you have to be able to get into any college you want.
Right.
And I thought college was the only that you had to go to college. And you see so many entrepreneurs and folks who don't go. That's a whole nother conversation.
Right.
We can have the next time. But why do you think homeschool pioneering parents fought so hard for this way back in the day? Like, I know what you're doing now. It's a bit easier, but way, way back when it first started, I mean, years ago, I know one in your movie, I saw that one lady mentioned that she was threatened that she could potentially go to jail.
Yeah.
And she said, all right, send me to jail.
Sam talks about this in the movie, and then you're talking about Zan Tyler. And their stories fit together because it's the system that has caused us to believe that the parent is the only one, or that the school system is the only one who can possibly teach our children. The parent is not equipped, is not capable, is not anything capable enough to be able to educate our kids at home. And if you look back in history, I mean, it's been almost 6,000 years that parents have been teaching their kids at home. It's only been in the last few hundred years that they've started sending them to school. And so we've just been conditioned to believe that it should be left to the experts. And again, it goes back to parenting, right? So we're just saying the experts are going to be better at parenting our children that God has entrusted to us instead of us being able to parent them. Luke 6:40 is one of my favorite verses. And it says this: a disciple is not above his teacher, but everyone, when he is fully trained, will be like his teacher. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, that begs the question, who is teaching our kids? Are we teaching them? Is the school system teaching them? Is the government teaching them? And that's really what it comes down to, is the government wants to teach them. And I mean, we could go off on a big rabbit trail on this, because this then all comes down to control and money. Mm-hmm. They want to be able to control our kids, and they want the money for the kids, because if our kids are in public school, they get paid for each student. And so it's not because they care so much about our children that they're saying, you know, leave it to us. We really do know what's best for your kids. It's that they want the control over our kids, mm-hmm. and they want that money that comes with each individual student that sits in a desk. And so it's scary. I mean, it's like anything else that the government does. They mm-hmm. do nothing out of the kindness of their hearts. Mm-hmm. There's always an agenda behind it, but parents have an agenda too. And our agenda is to raise our kids to love Jesus. And
Proverbs 22:6 says, train up a child in the way he should go. And when he's old, he will not depart from it. And
that's right.
And that's what I love about Schoolhouse Rocked, that movie, because you talk about a biblical worldview, you talk about what true education is, and that it's not just memorizing facts, and that it is, I mean, this just gives me goosebumps when I think about it. I mean, this is our directive from God. I mean, he didn't mince words. It's not gray. It's very black and white, that when we stand before the Lord, he is going to hold us accountable.
Right. Absolutely. One of the verses that we hang on to and often talk about when it comes to homeschooling, and especially if your children are in public school, where again, they're teaching everything contrary to the word of God. But it is Psalm 1, and Psalm 1 says, blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor sits in the seat of scoffers, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers, but his delight is in the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. And our kids cannot, I mean, when we put them in that public school system, they are sitting in the counsel of the wicked. That's exactly what they're doing. And they cannot focus on the Lord. They cannot delight in his word day and night when they're in a system that's contrary to God's truth. And so, it's such an interesting dynamic of public school versus homeschooling versus private schooling, and what are our kids being taught?
Yeah. And that's really, for me in 2020, that was just an eye-opening time frame, as it was, I think, for all Americans on so many levels. But education, you just hear about the parents are now seeing what the kids are learning and things of that nature. And really you see one thing, and then you're like, I wonder about, this subject in this class. And I wonder who published that book. What worldview is that exactly? And once you start digging, sometimes it's a little concerning what you find. I wanted to ask you, so what would you do in this situation? What if there's a single mom and she has to work, and maybe the dad is out of the picture, or maybe it's where the kids go to their dads every other weekend? I mean, is it even remotely possible for someone like that to homeschool?
Sure. That is a difficult situation. And in the movie, I don't think you've gotten to this part yet, because this is later in the movie. We talk with a single mom. She raised 4 boys on her own. And what you have to understand about school is that when you think about the academic part of it, the academics only take a few hours a day. And we're talking in high school, like 4 hours max per day is really what, even in a school, when kids are sitting in a classroom, they're not spending 8 hours learning and being taught things. They're moving from class to class. They're having breaks. They're having lunchtime. The teacher spends a good portion of that time wrangling the kids and trying to get the classroom under control. So the actual academic teaching time is not that long. It's not as long as we think. And school does not have to take place Monday through Friday between the hours of 8 and 3. It can, and that's when I would say most people do school, but it doesn't have to take place during those hours. School can take place in the evenings. It can take place on the weekends. You do what fits into your schedule. And then, like you mentioned, there are a lot of resources. I mean, numerous resources for homeschool families today. We are here in the Tulsa area where we live, and where we are there. I don't know of many places who have more homeschool resources than we have here. I mean, we have an entire homeschool football team, if you can imagine that.
Oh, is that Noah?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
And they're really good, apparently.
Yes.
So we have every sport you can imagine. We have, choir, we have a band, we have all the things, we have prom. And so our kids have access to all of these things, and not just here in Oklahoma. This is nationwide. But even if they don't have access to a local co-op or resource groups, things like that, with the, advent of the internet, I mean, there are so many resources. And I don't love social media, but you can still find some really good support on social media for homeschooling. And there are single moms homeschooling Facebook pages, and they encourage each other, and they share their resources with each other. The other thing that I think, and I wish that more churches did this, but if you have a church that's supportive of homeschooling, and maybe a retired homeschool mom or some just older women in the church who would be willing to come alongside you and just help, that is where the church needs to step in and say, we're the church, we're the body of Christ, and we're going to help one another. And that's a high calling for the church. And most churches are not stepping up and doing that, but I wish that they would. So it is hard to homeschool as a single parent or as a working mom, but it's not impossible, for sure.
Okay. That's good to know. I mean, if you really are passionate and you really feel the mandate and the call from God to do this, it's nice to know that, it's harder, but it's not impossible.
Right. Well, I mean, you look at what happened with COVID, everyone brought their kids home for COVID. And most parents just sat their kids in front of the computer and had their virtual classes. And some kids continued to learn that way. Most kids just goofed off. That's what a lot of kids did. They didn't do the work that was required of them because they had no accountability. But a lot of parents just figured out a way to make it work. And millions of those families have kept their kids home because they've realized what their kids were being taught in school. And they realized also, oh, I can actually do this. I can actually make this work for my family. And so, people brought home their kids because of the pandemic. There was a disease that was rampant and it was going to kill everybody. The disease of the public school system and what these kids are being taught is far more dangerous than any physical disease that our kids can be exposed to in the public school, because we're talking about a spiritual disease that they're being exposed to every day. And so I think once we look at it from that perspective, you would do anything. And in the movie, I don't know if you got to this part yet, but Heidi St. John, who's our main voice in the movie, she says basically, and we have a scene where there's a building on fire. And she says, the building's on fire. At what point are we going to say enough is enough and get our kids out of this burning building? And it's scary. It's totally scary. I mean, imagine literally running into a burning building to save your children. That would be terrifying. But that's what we do sometimes for our kids when we realize that we need to do what's best for them, is we get them out of that burning building, no matter what the cost.
And I think that what you're saying right now is so critical, because I think that is the issue, is that some don't either know or believe that the building is burning.
Right.
And so the sense of urgency with some is lacking. Right. And that's the whole crux of the argument and the mission, is saying, hey, the building is on fire.
Right.
Even in a Christian school or even in a private school. And it looks different. Maybe the fire isn't as bad, but I mean, there's still this. And I thought I wanted to speak to what you said earlier about indoctrination. I think that word is it's so funny to hear you say that, because what you're saying, I don't think people really think about the word indoctrination, but that is what we're doing as parents. And I feel like we use that word in a negative way, like, oh, those folks, the left, they're indoctrinating, but we're doing is educating. Like, we like to use a different word because it sounds, but it really is indoctrination on both sides. I mean, indoctrination, we're imparting truth and they're imparting a lie, but I just think that's such a funny word to use even with what we're doing, but it is indoctrination.
Absolutely.
Based on the word of God, and you're indoctrinating with a biblical worldview.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a badge of honor that we're all about indoctrination, but with a biblical worldview and with the truth of Jesus Christ. So what would you say to parents who have their kids in public school and they feel like their kids are missionaries, that they're the salt and the light? I'm sure you've possibly heard that before. Yes.
Yeah. We actually addressed this in the movie, and I love this question. I think it's an important question to ask because we were there. I said before, we were never going to homeschool our kids. And one of the reasons was because we thought we want to keep our kids, from the homeschool world, because we want to put them in the public school world so that they can go out and tell others about Jesus. And I come from a very strong military family. My dad, my husband, my father-in-law, my brothers-in-law, my sister-in-law, all military. I was a military wife when we first got married. And every military army, before they go out to fight, as they're preparing for war, they're trained, right? They don't just put these men and women on the front lines of a battle and say, good luck to you, go fight this battle, and we hope you win. We would never do that with our army, never with any kind of military. Every military gets trained in the most rigorous way to then go out and fight on the battlefield. And we are in a battle. We are in the battle for the hearts and souls of our kids. We're in a battle for our nation. We're in a battle for our marriages. We're in a battle for the church. Everything that we're standing on right now is a battlefield. And so we cannot put our kids on the front line of this battle before they're prepared to fight. They have not been trained. And even if you're teaching your kids the Bible at night, and very few families, by the way, do a family devotion time. Basically, most kids are going to church on Wednesday nights and they go to church on Sunday mornings, and they may or may not talk about the Bible throughout the week with their parents, but they're not really being trained up in righteousness. And so with homeschooling, it takes those kids off the battlefield. We train them up at home with the word of God, Ephesians 6:10-20, right? Put on the full armor of God. We are armoring up our kids for the battle that they're going to then go out into the world and be able to fight. And it's a fierce battle. It's a fierce battle that most adults are not even able to win right now in the public school system. And in a lot of private schools, adults are losing this battle. And so we expect that our kids are going to be able to go out and fight this battle. There's no way. They're not equipped or trained to be able to do that. And so it's our job to train them up to put on that full armor of God with them, not just on Wednesday night and on Sunday morning, but every day of the week.
I think that analogy is so good and it makes sense to me. And I think that would make sense to a lot of parents, especially with your military background. Thank you for your family service. I mean, that's such a wonderful thing that people are doing to this, a sacrifice they're making. And what a perfect analogy for this situation. I'm so grateful to have you here. And I know that home education is growing like leaps and bounds. I mean, I hear Pete Hegseth and David Goodwin, who wrote Battle for the American Mind. We had Pete and David both on here, and they're talking about classical education in the home and in private school settings. But the homeschool and home education movement seems like it's just exploding right now, probably because of some of the craziness that's being exposed and just ramping up in the school settings.
Yeah, it really is exploding. And it's really changed over the last couple of years since COVID, because it used to be that parents were running to something, years ago. Even when we started, it was that we were running to something. Now parents are running from something, as they should be. But a lot of parents that are running from the fire, they don't know what they're running to. So it's a great opportunity for us to be able to share the gospel with other homeschool families, to be able to share truth, but it's also really changed the face of homeschooling because there are now a lot of secular homeschoolers. I mean, there's a homeschool group for everybody, as you can imagine. And I love that in a sense. And at the same time, I'm like, but I want to keep our really small, close-knit conservative homeschool group together. And we still do. My girls attend a co-op, and it's a Christian co-op. And so they're
there right now, right?
They're there right now
Yeah,
while you and I are recording. Yes. But I love that they're able to, hold on a second. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
I love that they are able to do life with other Christian homeschool families whose parents are very like-minded to ours for the most part. Sometimes we'll find that family and we're like, oh, I'm not so sure about what you're believing or what you're thinking about this thing. But yes, I mean, so many more people are homeschooling today. It's not weird anymore like it used to be. Very rarely do you find people who are like, you homeschool? What is that? I mean, people just don't ask that question. More times than not, you get the, oh, wow, that's really great. I wish I had homeschooled my kids, or I wish I could have homeschooled my kids. I just didn't know. And so, yeah, it's a great community to be part of.
And I think that people didn't know, and it's gotten so much easier.
Yes.
I mean, come on, they mail you the curriculum. It shows up on your door. And you have folks who you can join ranks with and ask questions to, and things of that nature. I mean, you're just not alone.
Right. That is true. And I will say, homeschooling is not always easy, and it's not always fun. We have really hard days sometimes. We have days when I wake up on the wrong side of the bed. My girls wake up on the wrong side of the bed. We just have an off day. There are definitely difficult times, but life is hard, right? I mean, anything worth doing is hard. Marriage is hard. Parenting is hard. Homeschooling is hard. I don't want to paint this picture that it's always, flowers and beauty and beautiful classical music playing in the background. It doesn't always look like that. It rarely looks like that. Sometimes it's really hard, but you talked about sacrifice of the military, and it is a sacrifice. A lot of people sacrifice financially. We could live in a much bigger house and have much nicer cars if I went to work all day and brought home a nice paycheck and our girls were at school. We could live differently if we wanted to. So there is sacrifice that is involved, oftentimes in homeschooling, but it is absolutely worth the sacrifice. And as you know, our kids grow so fast. I mean, it's fast. In the blink of an eye. I can't believe that my oldest is a senior this year and we have this last year. And it's like, I'm trying to hold on to every moment with her, but I'm so grateful for the time that I've had with her at home, and kind of ready to let her go. It's scary to think about letting her go out into the world. But I know that we've prepared her as well as we can.
She's well trained.
Yeah.
She's ready for battle.
She is ready for battle. Yes.
And she knows what she believes and why she believes it. And she can defend her faith.
Right.
I don't know her, but I know that she was raised in your home and your homeschooling. I bet that she can do all those things.
Yeah. And she's still learning and she's still growing. And we've really trained her that learning is a lifelong process. And so keep digging into God's word, keep trusting him, keep surrendering your life every day, be in full surrender to him so that he will use you in the things that he's called you to do. And so, it's a fun adventure. Exciting.
And I love that you are being brutally honest and not painting this unrealistic picture. I think people would hear that and they'd be like, it can't be that easy. It can't be. But what you're speaking is truth, and that it is possible. And the reward is so great.
Yeah.
And rarely do you achieve an award and reward without sacrifice and hard work and discomfort. Right. I mean, whether it's running a marathon or staying married for 50 or 60 years or what have you, it's going to be a struggle and a fight. But the beauty is that God anoints, when you're obeying God and you're doing what he's called you to do, he anoints us and gives us a grace. The Bible says in Philippians 4:13 that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And so that includes, home education. So
I want to say one thing on that too. And you have such a good point there. Homeschooling allows God to show off. Parenting allows God to show off, because I so often, still 13 years into this, I wake up almost every day feeling completely ill-equipped to be able to homeschool my girls.
Still now.
Now I've done a homeschool podcast for 5 years. I have made a movie about homeschooling, and I still wake up and I still feel so many times like, do I really know what I'm doing? Am I doing this right? And really what it comes down to is us trusting the Lord and knowing that he is doing the work in our kids. And we're just the vessels that he's using. It's not me who's doing it. It's him doing it through me because I'm simply willing to say yes. And the great thing about that is in the end, he gets all the glory.
That's right.
I'm not ever going to be able to say, man, I was such a good homeschool mom. I was the best teacher ever. I'm never going to be able to say those things. I'm only going to be able to say, look at what God did, because I was willing to say yes. And I mean, even as we look at examples in the Bible, you look at Esther, Queen Esther. I mean, she was a nobody who was willing to say yes. And she said, if I die, I die.
That's right.
And really, I mean, she was willing to die for what the Lord was calling her to do. And Mary, the mother of Jesus, I mean, she said, yes, use me, Lord. These are just ordinary women who are willing to say yes. And we are just ordinary women. I'm nobody special. I'm just an ordinary mom who was not very well educated growing up. I never went to college, and somehow we've made it to my daughter's senior year, and we've made it to 7th grade with my youngest. And I can just look back and say, thank you, Jesus.
Look what God has done.
Amen.
Yeah. You look through lots of scripture. You look through David, who a boy killed Goliath, Gideon. God said, nope, there's too many men, down to 300. And he truly gets the glory and gets to show off when he used incompetent. I mean, Moses was a stutterer, probably just laughs when he's like, none of you, all of me. And I think that is his MO, is using broken, weak, incompetent people that he anoints to do his work.
Amen.
And we certainly fit that bill of being incompetent and broken. And we just say yes. And we talk about that all the time on the Moms on Mission podcast, is how one yes of obedience, the ripple effect it can have on thousands. I mean, when you think about it, Yvette, the number of people, your one yes, you and your husband, your one yes, how it's affected thousands of people. And you never probably would have imagined that all these years later. But I want to just say, so schoolhouserocked.com is your website. And that's the name of the movie, Schoolhouse Rocked, Homeschool Revolution. They can go to schoolhouserocked.com and watch the movie there.
Yes.
Okay. And get the link there. And then you also have a homeschool survival kit. So that's for somebody who's like, oh my gosh, what have I just done and agreed to do? They could get that, and that's where they could start.
Yes, the homeschool survival kit is for anybody, but it's really geared towards those who are just getting started. And they have all the questions. How do I do this? Where do I start? That is really who that is for. The movie is for everybody. We've had people who were they're just thinking about homeschooling, people who have never really considered homeschooling, to those who've been homeschooling for 25 years. And it reaches everybody. It reaches the masses. But the really cool audience that we found after the movie came out was kids, mostly teenagers who watched the movie. We had not even considered them as part of our core audience. But kids were watching it with their parents, still are watching it with their parents, and they watch it and they go, oh, now I understand this homeschooling thing. And it's been really neat to see the responses that we've gotten from kids who have seen the movie.
I wouldn't have even thought about that. I think I'm gonna have my son watch it. I think even if you didn't pursue it, again, it's educating yourself with truth. And maybe you come in contact with somebody, who has some small kids, and you watch this movie and you say, hey, you need to watch this movie.
Yes.
Hey, you need to get the survival kit or what have you. And just, you never know when you're going to need that information. So really everybody should watch the movie so they just know the truth.
Right. And the movie is free to stream. At Schoolhouse Rocked, ROCKED, schoolhouserocked.com. Or if they want to go straight to the movie, schoolhouserockedmovie.com, and they can stream it for free. It doesn't cost them a penny.
It is so well done. And now that you're saying that your husband is from Hollywood, it makes perfect sense, because when I thought, oh, it's a homeschool movie. Right. And I just, I just thought I don't know what I expected. I just didn't expect Hollywood material, and it is so good. So
thank you.
Even if you're like, my kids are graduated or what have you, everybody should watch it, because it's really well done. And just, it's like watching about your life and how
Yeah.
you fell into this or what have you. I mean, it's just such a great movie. So Schoolhouse Rocked, past tense, which I love that title. I think it's really creative, schoolhouserocked.com. And then you also have 2 podcasts. If we go to schoolhouserocked.com and they can find your podcasts.
Yes, or you can find them on any podcast platform. So the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast is our main podcast. That one is a 1-hour long interview that I do every week with a new guest. And we split that into 3 20-minute episodes because most moms don't have an hour long to listen to an episode. So that's split into parts 1, 2, and 3 that we air on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then our sister podcast is called Homeschool Insights. And that's usually somewhere between 7 to 9 minutes. It's under 10 minutes. And that's 5 days a week. And it's just a blast, just a daily dose of strong encouragement with parenting. And we talk about everything on the podcast. We talk about family parenting, marriage, homeschooling, you name it. If it is anything that the homeschool family deals with, we talk about it on the podcast. So it's not just homeschooling, and we talk, from preschool all the way through graduation. So we kind of fill the gamut of everything that homeschool families encounter.
Wow, that is great. So, and then you have something called a Homegrown Generation Family Expo that you've done a few times.
Yes.
And they can access and watch, those expos. They can watch those online as well.
Yes. That was an online expo that we did. Like I said, we've done it twice, and those were live and interactive with our guests. And those were really fun. Sam Sorbo has been part of both of them. We've just had an incredible lineup of people, and I think both of them were 4 days long, and it was just back to back. It was basically like doing a live podcast kind of. But we were very intentional about what subjects we were talking about each day. So we had kind of different themes for each day, and they're a lot of fun. So you can still have access. As the first one we did, Kirk Cameron, Heidi St. John, Sam Sorbo, they were all part of the lineup for that one. And then this last one that we did a few months ago, that was back in March, had another great lineup. So if you sign up for, and it's, I think $20, it might be $15. But somewhere between $15 and $20 now. I know my husband lowered the price, but if you sign up for the Homegrown Generation Family Expo, you have access to both conferences that we've done, both online conferences that we've done.
Do you have a new one coming up?
We will, but we don't have a date for it yet. So we're planning one probably for possibly this spring, but we may not do it until next fall because our daughter's graduating. And so we really want to
be present
for that. There's a lot going on with graduation.
Yes. Turns out that's not for the faint-hearted. It is a lot. Yeah. Well, thank you guys for listening. Thank you so much, Yvette, for coming and sharing. I'm so excited. I was so thrilled to get to speak with you, especially on the heels of speaking with Sam last week. I mean, just learning so much. And so let's go to schoolhouserocked.com, and y'all want to watch this movie. I'm not kidding. It's so good. And check out the podcast as well. And then can they follow you on all the platforms that you're on? And
I will be honest, we are horrible with social media. So Facebook is the best place to follow us. My husband is really the brains and everything behind everything that Schoolhouse Rock does. I just have the fun part of getting to sit and talk to people. But he keeps up with Facebook, and he's always posting things, and we post articles. We post, we've got our podcasts and stuff.
And they can ask questions, like they could maybe message you on Facebook or through your website, schoolhouserocked.com.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. If people want to get a hold of us, the best way is to email us at podcast@schoolhouserocked.com. But they can also message us through Facebook, Instagram. We post some things on there from time to time. There's only so much time in the day.
Right. Yes. Well, I'm writing that down.
We need a social media guru to come on board with us.
Come on, volunteer. So podcast at Schoolhouse Rocked, past tense, schoolhouserocked.com.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you. Thank you so very much. And thank you all so much for listening. And we so appreciate you. If you want to get in touch with Yvette, go ahead and email her at podcast@schoolhouserock.com. But please go to schoolhouserock.com and watch the movie, and then give us your feedback. Tell us what you think about it. We'd love to hear from you. And then, as always, we'd love to hear from you at Moms on a Mission. We are on every single platform you can imagine. We are still on YouTube, if you can believe it. But we prefer if you'd follow us on Rumble, since it's uncensored. We'd love for you to follow us there. So just go to Rumble and look for Moms on a Mission, and click the follow icon. And then thanks so much for listening, and have a great day. In light of recent bank volatility and skyrocketing inflation, diversification is a must. That's why I use my good friend Andrew Sorcini at Beverly Hills Precious Metals. Beverly Hills Precious Metals makes it so easy to diversify. I personally ordered some silver and it arrived on my doorstep just a few days later. They make it so easy. And if you're not ready to do that and you just want to ask a few questions, they're there for you too. I personally got some silver and also am rolling over some of my IRA. You can actually roll over your IRA and have it be backed by silver and gold. So if you don't have any extra money to invest in silver and gold, rolling over a 401k or an IRA, or even part of it, if you just want to try it at first, just for a little bit, you can do that as well. So go to bh-pm.com today and ask all your questions. You can connect with somebody. And like I said, you can just get some information at first if you want and pray about it, and then get back with them to roll over part of your IRA or all of it, or order some gold and silver. That's bh-pm.com. and tell them that Moms on a Mission sent you. Hey, everybody. Did you know that recent research from the CDC says that millions of Americans develop parasitic infections and symptoms often go unnoticed or are misdiagnosed? Parasites are actually the cause of many health problems such as anxiety, depression, chronic pain, fatigue, and unexplained digestive issues. We all need a common sense strategy to improve our health. Moms on a Mission encourages you to reach out to our good friend, Dr. Jason Dean. Dr. Dean's Full Moon Protocol provides all natural detoxification and fights inflammation. And the supplements are made with 100% organic ingredients and are proven to kill parasites safely and effectively. I know after I took Full Moon Protocol, I had more energy. To order your Full Moon Protocol today, go to bravetv.store/mission to save $20 off your first order. That's bravetv.store/mission. According to leading sleep experts and sleephealth.org, over 50 million Americans struggle getting a good night's rest. That's why Moms on a Mission loves MyPillow. MyPillow makes amazing pillows, sheets, mattress toppers, robes, towels, literally almost everything you need for a good night's sleep. They also make dog beds for your dogs. So by going to mypillow.com, typing in the code MISSION, you not only receive a high quality product, but you're supporting Moms on a Mission and this podcast. If you like what you're hearing and you agree with it, you believe in it, and you want to support Moms on a Mission, then go to mypillow.com today and order some high quality products and just type in the code MISSION at checkout and you can save up to 66% off. That's mypillow.com, code MISSION.
Since 2014, Organic Body Essentials has offered clean, simple, certified organic skincare. Our organic face-to-feet and federally compliant hemp and pet products are manufactured under USDA and FDA guidelines. Our products are inspired by God using plants He created. In Ezekiel 47:12, it says, "The fruit is for food and the leaves for healing." We believe in the power of God to heal, so we pray over our products and for our customers. Our therapy in a bottle approach has been widely received, and our customers' testimonials continue to inspire us. You can find us at organicbodyessentials.com and obe.organicbodyessentials.com. Please feel welcome to reach out with questions. Use coupon code MISSION at checkout for a discount. Thank you for your support by using MISSION at checkout to benefit Moms on a Mission and their quest to reestablish traditional values in our education system and empowerment for a healthy lifestyle.